This presentation will provide you information on Section 504. The civil rights movements of the 1960s led to the creation of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It was intended to prevent discrimination while at the same time allowing students with disabilities to receive the same educational experience as their non-disabled peers. Schools could no longer place students of specific race, gender, or ethnic group into special education programs. This piece of civil rights legislation not only pertained to students in special education, but also those students with disabilities in this general education classroom. Section 504 contains specific requirements for public schools since they receive federal funds. They are to provide accommodations, modifications, and services for students with disabilities to gain equal access to comparable education of their non-disabled peers. The disability in this case must interfere with their ability to learn in the educational classroom. The definition of a disability under Section 504 is one that has, number 1, mental or physical impairments, number 2, which substantially limits, and then the third part is one or more of the person's life activities, such as hearing, seeing, speaking, thinking, walking, breathing, learning, working. To determine whether a student is eligible for Section 504 services, it begins with an evaluation process. School districts are responsible for establishing standards and procedures for the evaluation process for students who need or are believed to need special education and/or related services because of their disability. The evaluation process draws from a variety of sources. These sources might be an aptitude test, achievement test, previous records, or even observations. After these variety of sources have been collected, it is reviewed by a multidisciplinary team. This team is made up of a designated Section 504 coordinator, school principal, classroom teacher, and any other educator who works with the student. If the team deems that it is necessary for a plan, this means that the mental or physical impairment substantially limits the student's educational performance. Then, the plan must be created in writing. This is not a requirement, but it is a recommendation to protect the student. And the plan needs to include specific accommodations, modifications, and services. Section 504 is often thought as a paper compliance rather than a legal mandate. Many public schools focus more on the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is federally funded within the schools, and therefore they're neglecting Section 504 for those students with disabilities who do not qualify for special education. Teachers and administration often lack the understanding and knowledge of Section 504. Section 504 is funded by states. Therefore, it is limiting the ability to assess and provide for students with disabilities. A student who qualifies for a 504 plan receives accommodations, modifications, and related services to allow them to perform at the same level as their non-disabled peers. The accommodations, modifications, and related services must be explicitly noted in their Section 504 plan, as well as individualized for each student. Such accommodations, modifications, and related services might include modified assignments and tests, use of study guides, organizing tools, preferential seating, assignment of an aide, school health services, speech language services, physical and occupational therapy. Is Section 504 meeting its goal? Not as intended. Section 504 is often ignored because of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The effectiveness of the services and the appropriateness of the services provided to students are still questionable, as are the improvements in student achievements with their services. In addition, students who are eligible to receive a Section 504 plan are not getting them. There are some unintended consequences. Some include the pressures from Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, as well as No Child Left Behind. These pieces of legislation have put pressure on schools for all students to be performing at a specific level. Because of this pressure, schools are then abusing Section 504 to provide support to those lower students. And this is then risking the inaccurately labeling of students with disabilities just for the sake of higher scores. Schools are supposed to have a designated 504 coordinator. However, many principals and assistant principals serve as this coordinator. These individuals have limited knowledge and professional training in the area of special education. And those individuals responsible for implementing the plan may not have the skills to effectively do so. Teachers, as well, lack knowledge of Section 504. There is little professional development that has been provided to them. And in general, just the overall nature of Section 504 is very broad. Because it is very similar to Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it can make it confusing. But at the same time, Section 504 has some flexibility and ambiguity within itself. For an example, there is no list of specific approved disabled conditions. The definitions of impairments can be very wide. The list of major life activities leaves room for interpretation. And then with schools having to have control over the evaluation and how often to reevaluate, that leaves room for uncertainty. And then just this general lack of understanding means educators are often interchangeably using Section 504 and Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which adds to the confusion. Section 504 allows those students who do not meet the disability requirements under IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, to receive necessary support in their education. These accommodations and related services do not have an age restriction. Students are covered for their lifespan, from elementary to secondary to post-secondary. Students remain eligible until it is determined that their mental or physical impairment no longer substantially limits the student's ability to learn. Another impact is that students are often being over-identified under Section 504. This is due to the pressures being placed on schools for students to show growth and be at a specific level. Schools are using the Section 504 accommodations as a means to providing additional services to low-performing students. Section 504 requires that students with disabilities get a free, appropriate public education within their district. The related services must also be provided at the school. Teachers, administration, parents, and students need to support and understand the implementation of Section 504 in order for it to be a success and for the students to receive an equal opportunity as their non-disabled peers. If a school does not provide services as noted under a 504 plan, schools are considered out of compliance. Section 504 has laid a good foundation for improving access to education for students with disabilities. However, I feel because of this lack of understanding from teachers, administrators, parents, and students, it really makes me wonder, is Section 504 serving the right students with their specified accommodations and modifications for their learning in the general education classroom? Section 504 needs to be revisited by policymakers. Not only is it confusing, but also with the addition of new legislative acts, it needs to be updated for the times that we have now. My recommendations are that we increase awareness of Section 504 with not only parents, teachers, and within our district. Data needs to be collected to determine if these accommodations, modifications, and related services provided to students are effective. There has to be collaboration and communication between all parties involved: teachers, administration, parents. And in addition, funds need to be made available for states to fund 504 services to school districts.